Hello YouTube, and welcome to this, long-awaited video. This video is a remaster of one of my first ever videos, the video on the Imperial invasion of Akavir. I've been working on this video for a long time as a remaster, so I hope that you guys will be able to enjoy it. In this video I will be discussing the Imperial invasion of Akavir with a strategy map, like in the original, but this time in HD, with some better visuals of course, and a way better microphone than the webcam microphone that I used in the original. That all said, let's kick off. Before we can talk about the invasion, you need to know an important thing for this video. We do not have official maps of Akavir. The map that I use in this video is fan-made, so it might not be completely accurate, unfortunately. Alright, let's talk invasions. Before the plans for the invasion of Akavir started, Tamriel, under its Emperor Sepphoris Septim II, was in turmoil. However, when his son Uriel Septim V ascended to the throne, he would attempt to restore order. Once Uriel V had restored order to all of Tamriel, he was regarded as a great emperor by its people, but he wanted more. He wanted to be the greatest of the Septim emperors, greater than even Tiber Septim himself. So he wanted to conquer distant lands to set glory for his name. The thing is, Tamriel was all conquered by the empire, and the only things left to conquer were beyond Tamriel. He quickly conquered a small island of Roscrea north of Tamriel, but this wasn't enough for him, as his eyes shifted to the ultimate prize, the continent of Akavir. If he would conquer Akavir, he would be the greatest emperor that ever lived. After this realization, he began to prepare for an invasion of Akavir. He started planning the invasion in the year 270 of the Third Era. In the year 282, Uriel conquered the three small island kingdoms on the east of Tamriel, Esronit, Katnoke and Inslia, as a preparation for the attack, as these small islands had a perfect location between Tamriel and Akavir to serve as resupply bases and as a fleet base. When these islands were conquered, the town of Black Harbor on the island of Esronit was drastically renovated, with a new port so that it could be used as a stepping stone for the Imperial fleet on their way to Akavir, and eventually as a resupply point on the long term. At this time, the construction of the fleet would begin that would house the expeditionary force of the Empire that would spearhead the invasion of Akavir. In the years 285 and 286 of the Third Era, the Emperor ordered scouting of the coastal areas of Akavir and the sea lanes in the Paumatic Ocean to make sure that the invasion could take place. After a lot of scouting, the southern Akaviri kingdom of the Saci was chosen as the first target for the invasion. In the year 287, the Emperor was gathering his expeditionary force and the new Eastern Fleet. This fleet and this army were one of the biggest fleets and armies to ever sail the seas of Nirn, and that was a feat on itself. In the year 288, it was time for the invasion. The 5th, 7th, 10th and 14th Legion of the Imperial army landed on the beaches of Akavir, while the 9th and 17th would follow later as reinforcements when the beach would be secured. The Imperial army quickly captured a small Saci port town that was chosen for its proximity to Tamriel and was a good location in a river valley. It all went very well. The Saci had abandoned the town when they heard of the Imperial landing on the beaches, so they captured the town immediately without any resistance. The town was renamed Septimia after the Imperial bloodline, and there was much celebration that evening, for the first colony of the Empire in Akavir was a reality, so now the Imperial province of Akavir was officially in existence. The town was quickly fortified and the port expanded to house the massive fleet of the Empire. When the town was fortified, the Emperor marched inland following the river with 2 legions. They did not get much resistance on their way to the next Saci city, and this city was also quickly abandoned by the Saci when they saw the Imperial army approaching. Due to its central location and better fortification, the Emperor decided to make this city his headquarters of the invasion and renamed this city Ionith, as it was much bigger than the small Saci port town that they had captured earlier. After the capture of Ionith, the Imperial army continued expanding into the surrounding lands without getting any serious resistance. They were, however, continually shadowed by mounted scouting troops of the Saci, which prevented small scouting teams from leaving Ionith or Septimia because they would be killed by the mounted Serpentine Saci warriors. These mounted Saci raiders could not be effectively fought, because the Emperor wasn't able to bring much cavalry along to Akavir since there wasn't enough room on the fleet. These sassy little raider bands also prevented couriers from traveling between Septimia and Ionith, so the battle mages in both cities had to make up for communication by communicating between the cities in magical means. During this time, the Emperor tried to make contact with the Sassy king or ruler, but just like the couriers, these envoys never returned. During this time of attempted contact, he stopped the expanding of the colonies because he hoped to make contact and win the province by negotiation, because the Sassy were no match for the Imperial army, or so he thought. This would later prove to be a mistake, because the Sassy were at this time still surprised by the attack at this time, and thus the Emperor wasted valuable time by trying to negotiate. Meanwhile, instead of fighting, the first 4 legions were constructing a road between Septimia and Ionith. They also constructed some small forts to house the guard troops to maintain safety for the conquered land. And they were busy fortifying both cities that were still frequently attacked by raiders and bandits. This is the time when the reinforcing legions were scheduled to land in Akavir. This plan of bringing reinforcements, however, was delayed in favor of bringing colonists to work the land. This was because the Sassy completely abandoned the land, even the civilians, and thus more people were needed to work the field so that the Imperial army did not have to rely fully on the supply lines from Black Harbor and did not have to waste their soldiers on farming. Also, some battalions of cavalry were brought over. Due to this cavalry, the Imperial army could finally effectively combat the Sassy raiders and scouts in a decent way, so that the number of raids and scouts in the conquered territory drastically declined. Everything seemed well, some small farm towns were being constructed and the civilian colonists were preparing for a good harvest. It was at this time that the Sassy ambassador showed up at the gates of Ionith, pretending to want peace, and so negotiations started. In the beginning of that winter, the first real disaster occurred. During a mysterious storm at sea, a large portion of the Imperial fleet was destroyed, including the Emperor's flagship. That which remained of the fleet was continually threatened by storms and was not able to leave Black Harbor. The Emperor heard of this by Battle Mage and decided that, with the Elder Council's support, that the expeditionary force in Akavir would be able to survive of its own supplies until spring, when the boats would hopefully be able to reach Septimia. Once this was decided, the expeditionary force rationed the food and settled in for a mild winter, because the scouts of the years 285 and 286 and earlier scoutings had reported that Akavir had very mild winters, so there would be not much problems. But the winter turned out to be way more severe than expected, and due to supply problems and thousands of civilians, the rations became even tighter than they already were. During this winter, the small farm towns in their conquered territory were quickly overrun by the Sassy raiders, and the forts were quickly besieged and usually taken. It did not take long before all the forts between Septimia and Ionith were overrun, as well as most of the other forts in the region. This means that all communication between the two cities had to be done entirely by magic, and this made it so that there were not many battle mages left for direct battle. Then, to make matters worse, a large group of supposed Sassy ambassadors showed up at Ionith, claiming to bring a peace offer by the Sassy leader, but instead, they sneaked into the city by night and opened the gates for a large group of Sassy assassins to assassinate the Emperor. The Emperor's life was saved by his guards, but this act of treason ended the negotiation for good. Entering the spring, the Emperor had hoped for some good luck, but another disaster took place. Instead of a calm spring, hot dry winds began to flow from the east, and these winds continued to flow deep into the summer, and that made it so that the harvest of that year was completely ruined in Akavir. And the river between Septimia and Ionith also fell completely dry, so that ships could no longer sail from Septimia to Ionith. To this day, it's debated by Imperial scholars if this was a rare climate pattern of Akavir, or if the Sassy were able to magically alter the weather. Some say that it's easy to say that they could not have done it by magic, because magic is unable to do such a thing. That's what a lot of Imperial scholars agree on, but as people that have played Skyrim, you only have to look at the clear sky shout in Skyrim and you can see that, well, those people are just wrong, because magic can alter the weather. So the option of Sassy manipulating the weather cannot be ruled out. Due to bad weather at Black Harbor, the fleet with supplies was also late, and when it departed again, it was ravaged by storms again on its way to Akavir, and when it sailed into Septimia, it was almost cut in half. Due to the need of supplies, the fleet was immediately sent back with battle mages on board to assist in bad weather. This would prove to be the Emperor's biggest mistake, as the council urged him to pull back to Tamriel with the expeditionary force because the situation seemed desperate, and this seemed the only way to avoid complete disaster by saving the legions and the civilians. But as the Emperor sent the fleet back for supplies, this chance was quickly diminished. During this time, the Emperor attempted to regain control over the territory between Septimia and Ionith, and after retaking some of the land, the Emperor decided to march north of Ionith with every man that he could spare, leaving only a small garrison in both cities. He did this because he had the intelligence that the Saci were gathering their armies on the north of Ionith to take it back behind a mountain range, and he had hoped to catch that army by surprise and destroy it before it could gather to full strength. This actually worked, and the Imperial army managed to catch the army by surprise and have most of their army flee. They even captured the general of the Saci army, a Saci noble. But soon the fleeing Saci soldiers were linked up with an army marching towards the gathering, and combined they decided to attack. This attack by the Saci took the Emperor by complete surprise, and large parts of the Imperial army were defeated, killed, and also captured there. This is where the true disaster begins. The Imperial army made desperate attempts to defend the conquered territory, but after a few weeks most of the territory was lost. All forts captured, and Septimia and Ionith were once again under siege. At this time the situation was desperate. The battle mages were completely devoted to creating water to keep the soldiers alive, and there were no battle mages left to fight or heal the soldiers. The fleet, however, had reached Black Harbor safely due to the battle mages' effort. But all attempts to return to Akavir were a disaster because the three islands were continually ravaged by storms. In the year 289, the Elder Council was desperate, for all contact with the Emperor had vanished, and they ordered the fleet to sail out of Black Harbor regardless of the risk. Through great effort, the fleet managed to reach Akavir, and hope was raised when contact was made with the Emperor's personal battle mage, who reported that Ionith still held out. But Septimia was also under siege when they arrived, and the battle mages on the ship managed to hold the enemy off long enough for the garrison of Septimia to board the ships and withdraw to the sea with the fleet. At this moment, it was decided that what was left of the expeditionary force in Ionith would try to break out of Ionith and fall back to the beaches near Septimia, where they would embark on the fleet and retreat from Akavir. This plan was executed, and the Emperor broke successfully out of the city by night. They rushed for the Septimia, but on the road to Septimia they were ambushed by Saci armies from the north and the south. They were quickly surrounded, and here the Emperor held a heroic last stand with the 10th Legion, and thus allowed the 14th Legion to retreat to the beaches. That night, during the victory celebrations of the Saci, 2 soldiers of the 10th Legion were able to escape, and from a distance saw the Emperor and the remainder of the 10th Legion die by many arrows execution. The 14th Legion and those 2 soldiers reached the beaches of Septimia and embarked on the fleet, leaving Akavir for good, and thus far no other attempt to conquer it has been made. This concludes the disaster of the Akavir invasion. This remastered video of one of my first videos was a lot of fun to make. I remember making the original video when I was only at 150 subscribers, and look how far we've come now. I mean, we're at 22,000 subscribers. That's quite the jump from when I first made this video. I want to thank all of you for the overwhelming support over the last few years. It's truly been amazing, and I especially realized that when remaking an older video. That said, if you like this video, like of course, subscribe. If you want more Elder Scrolls lore content, well, you'll find it on my channel. And if you want personal contact with me, there's my Instagram and Discord in the description. I still don't really feel all that well, so that you might have been able to hear that in my voice, but I'm improving quite steadily, so I hope that I'll be able to put out more videos soon. That said, if you want to support me in a more personal way, there's of course my Patreon. You get your name at the end of every video, and yeah, some other Patreon benefits. With that said, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.